Are home buyers just leaving the market, and are the numbers in the Austin market crashing? Jeremy Knight, the Knight Group, your favorite Austin realtor. Let's get right into this because you're seeing headlines that people are leaving the buying market, that rates are so high, people aren't buying. That's actually not true. So we'll look at some of that information. And we're also going to look at the numbers in the Austin market and decide, is it actually a good time to buy or not? Now, you're going to say, Jeremy, you're a realtor, so you're always going to tell me it's a good time to buy. Well, that's not true because a lot of times I have told plenty of buyers or sellers it's not either the time to sell or buy. And I've lost a lot of money doing that because I could have made money doing it and I didn't. So, what I want to show you today is the numbers. What are you seeing though? This is your time to drop a comment below. Have you seen the numbers? Are you worried about the Austin housing numbers? What are you seeing in the market if you're buying or selling? I have a whole video coming out next week about new construction. So, stay tuned with that. There's a lot of good information that I put in that video about new construction. So drop a comment below. All right, let's get straight into it. It looks like the numbers in Austin definitely took a dive. If you look at this graph that I personally made, it's showing you the month over month rates. So we went from a high in May of 667. We dropped down to 615 in June, back up with a little bounce in July, and now we are down at 555, barely beating out the beginning of the year's numbers. Now, a lot of people are going to say that this is a crash, that whatever. We've put out information that we are definitely in a housing recession. There are definitely a lot less buyers, but there still are buyers. Let's look at the chart here real quick. So here's the information that ABOR puts out, and they're basically saying, yeah, prices have come down to 555. We're only 3% up for the year, and there's only 858 closings in the Austin area. This is where I'm running into having a lot of issues with the data company that's pulling the information for ABOR, which is Austin Board of Realtors. So Texas A&M does this, and yet I keep finding discrepancies in their numbers every time I look. Now, I'm not saying prices are not coming down. I am saying the prices are coming down, but to the effect they're coming down, I think they're wrong. Give me a second here. Let me show you this. So 858 closings, 30% down. What's interesting about this though is we are seeing less listings. And if you've paid attention to my videos, I always say this time of year, as we're hitting September, October, it's actually the better time to buy. And now you're going to go back to the whole thing, Jeremy. Let me show you something though. If you go back to my chart, last year, you could buy a home for $525 in September. This is when I was telling everybody to buy a home, buy a home, buy a home. And then you came all and hit me saying, Jeremy, you're just telling everybody to buy homes. But what happened? If you had waited from September till May, you would see a price increase of $100,000. But let me show you something really important. So here are the interest rates right now. The interest rates are definitely at like 6.3% for a fixed 30-year loan. They're all over the place, but really the lowest we're looking at is a 15-year fixed 5.5%. Okay, so let's actually see what that looks like. If you were to purchase a home back at the height of the market, which was 667, I showed you, let's click on it, 667, right? Versus now, which is 555. We'll show you that in a second. But if you would have bought last year around September at 525, the interest rates, look, the interest rates back in September of last year, here's December's numbers, were around 3.18. So had you listened to me, you would have got a house for 525 and you would have gotten a rate at 3.2% around there. So let's look at this information though. 667 was the height of the market, and around that time was about 4.7-ish rate. So your monthly mortgage on a 667 home would have been almost $3,800 a month. Now, if we actually go look at 550, where we are now, at 550 at a 6.25 rate, you're at $3,700. So with prices coming down, even though interest rates are going up, you could potentially pay a little less than what you would have paid at the height of the market as far as your monthly mortgage. Now, the caveat to that is you do have a lot more going towards interest. Now, I've heard a lot of agents say you marry the home and you date the rate or something like that. Yeah, that is something, but I would definitely not tell people, hey, go ahead and you can refi, because back in 06, 7, and 8, it's what a lot of realtors said. Don't worry about this adjustable rate mortgage. You can definitely refi later, and then a lot of people couldn't refi. They didn't have the equity. So equity is going to be an issue going along in the future. So we'll talk about equity in a little bit, but I want to get back to my major point here. My major point was that at 525, where you would have bought in September of last year, you were looking at a $2,900 a month mortgage. So that's actually $700, almost $800 less than if you had waited till then or trying to buy now. So Why I'm telling you this is because if we go back and look at these numbers, let's say the numbers do bounce back for the last half of the year or do what they kind of did in 2019, which is just stay flat towards the end of the year, which is what typically does happen. So a lot of what we're seeing in the market right now has to do with this. It also has to do with the fact that interest rates are really high. The Fed is about to raise rates again. And as if we've seen on these rates, every time they go to raise the rates, it actually goes back down. So we probably might see rates come down a little bit in later September, October, whenever they announce the rate hike. But I don't want to go ahead and tell you, hey, that's what's going to happen, because it might not. So here's the interesting part. So let's go back to my main point. Now, I showed you that their stats are showing 858 closed, which is 30% down. Now, what's interesting is when I look through the data, I found there's a lot of new construction homes that closed in the 450 to 500 range. So I think that could have pulled numbers down a little bit. But here's what I did. I always go through and I pull all the numbers for the same month and time period on my own and then gauge where we are from there. And that's how I'm usually able to tell you like what we're going to see for the numbers. So this is for July's numbers. Now, when I showed July's, I showed 971 closings. If we look at the numbers for July that they posted, this is July's numbers, they put 835. Well, that's a pretty big difference between 971 and 835. And that's for July's numbers. What's interesting about that, if you look at the numbers I showed, I posted 650 as where we would be at for the July's numbers. Well, they came out with July's numbers at 633. So about 18 grand lower than what I would have posted. Now let's go look at the numbers for August. I'm showing 982 closed, 982 closed. They're posting 858 closed. That makes a big difference. That's another 125 something closings that they didn't post. So of course the closed sales are going to be lower. I'm not saying that they were going to be higher than last year's, because if you're going year over year, but what I'm showing you is the fact that you're still seeing a 595 median price for closed. So if you go 15 grand below that, kind of like what they're typically showing me off, 18 grand maybe, that puts you around like 570, 575, around there. It's 20 grand, 580. So really the number should have been in the 580s. And if you pay attention to the live stream the other day, I actually said, I'm posting numbers in the high fives, which means they're probably going to be like 580 to 590 around there. But they came out with 555. I think they're wrong. I think part of why we're seeing numbers this low, yes, prices are coming down. We're personally actually helping a lot of clients right now negotiate lower than list price. So yes, I knew prices were going to come down, and they're negotiating in closing costs, which means that they're buying down the rate. Now, we've had Sarah on the channel, and Sarah's even said it's probably not the best thing to buy down the rate right now. You could refinance in the future. I'm not going to tell you what to do on that side. That's up to you and your, financial situation, but that's what we've been seeing. What's also interesting is we're hearing a lot of people talking about a recession. And I think a lot of this is pushing buyers away from the buyer pool. Look, affordability has been an issue, but if you're looking at the numbers, we're back down to the end of last year's numbers. So if you're a buyer sitting on the sideline and you've had the funds sitting and waiting, it might not be a terrible time to buy. You got to figure out what you're going to do with the rate. But what's really important is that what we're seeing with this recession is that it's more of a supply side recession. And so what that means is we've had a hard time getting supplies for things. Even a lot of these new builds, which I don't want to go into new builds too much because I have a video coming out next week about new builds, but even new builds are still having a really tough time closing because of supplies. It's really interesting that why we're in the situation we are now, a lot of it does still have to do with rates, but prices are back down to last year's numbers. So is it still time to buy? Should you not buy? That's definitely up to you. Drop a comment below. What's interesting is I posted these numbers yesterday. Guess what happened when I posted these numbers yesterday? And I didn't say like it's the time to buy. I had 4 investors yesterday reach out to me like, hey, so I saw that you posted this. Where should we be looking now? But people still need a place to live, whether they're renting or whether they're buying. And I'm going to talk about renting in a second. So I think what you will see is a lot of people get back into the market. Now I got a little anecdotal thing here as well, that we'll start seeing a lot of these listings pull off of the market. Now, if we look at while we're having new listings hit, the sales numbers I showed you showed that we actually had a reduction in the number of listings, but we're also seeing a high number of withdrawn listings, a high number of expired listings, and a high number of hold listings. What's interesting about this is I pulled the numbers for the rental market, and the rental data is actually coming down as well. What we've noticed, or what I've noticed, is that there is more inventory in that space. So I'll show you these numbers real quick. So I pulled the information here, and I'm showing for the month before, where that median price, just as for single family homes, was 26.95, and if we look at this month, it's 26.50. So it's come down. I think what we're seeing here is a lot of these homes that are sitting on the market are also that are vacant are also putting up that they're for rent at the same time. So we're seeing more rental inventory go up as well as regular inventory. So you have two sets of inventory that are the same thing. So if one of them falls off, the rental will fall off as well. Or if it rents, then the sale will come off. So I think we're about to see that time of year, if we look at the numbers, where inventory starts to drop. We get into November, then you start to see people panic buy. That's kind of what we've seen if we're looking at these numbers here. Other than 2019, it shows it was flat. But what's interesting about the rentals is that we are seeing rental rates come down. And I think that's because we're seeing a supply of both go up. I think this inventory drops off towards the end of the year. Buyers get back in the pool. Renters start seeing prices decrease. So they start doing their thing. So what do you think though? This is a long video, long-winded. I said a lot of things very fast. What do you think? I think there's still a lot of buyers in the market. I'm working with clients constantly. There's still a lot of listings, but I think we'll see a reduction in listings. There we go. Jeremy Knight, the Night Group. Drop a comment below. See you next video. And gosh, I need a drink now. That was a long one.